Good morning on the West Coast, good afternoon on the East Coast, and happy days everywhere in between. Today is Wednesday, March 19th, and as I always say, it's a beautiful day to have a webinar. And dare I say it today, dare I say it one day early, happy spring, everyone. Happy freaking spring. I'm John Yarrington, CEO of the Performance Marketing Institute, a 501c6 not-for-profit trade association dedicated to protecting, promoting, and advancing the direct-to-consumer and performance-driven marketing industries. And on behalf of the entire PDMI family, it's my pleasure to welcome you back to yet another fun episode of an exciting episode of the PDMI Take 20. As a reminder, the PDMI Take 20 is a quick-hitting roundtable discussion led by industry experts on trending topics, all in 20 minutes or less. Today, we're joined by a fabulous quartet of media experts, including Rebecca Barr of RLB Consulting, Doug Bognar of Apex Media, Mark Orton of Kingstar Media, and first-timer Tony Wragg of Prestige Social. And together, we'll be looking at how the changes in consumer media consumption is affecting the performance marketing brand spending behavior.
Welcome in, everybody. Tony, welcome into your very first Take 20. So glad to have you here. So we are actually in the second part of what we call media and consumption habits. This is kind of part two. We all know that devices and technologies are changing the way that media companies, agencies, brands, and consumers both receive and respond to advertising. So in part one, we explored how consumers have changed, right? You and I, and how we continue to change with our habits and our behaviors, what we see, what we don't see, how older generations maybe adjust and change their buying behavior versus younger generations. And that's on the consumer side. But of course, there are two sides when it comes to media consumption and purchasing. There's the consumer, and then there's the brands and the media that's delivering all that content. So for part two, we're going to dive into how media spending has changed, which channels are working best and where, and with the overwhelming and multimodal options that are available now to small and mid-sized and enterprise brands, where do they start the conversation about where to spend their hard-earned and precious marketing dollars? And again, it's not just for big brands. Technology is making it possible for smaller brands to actually get into the CTV space as well. So there's a whole new set of players that is also changing the landscape. So Rebecca, we're going to start with you. We're so excited to have everybody here. When you talk with clients, are brands trying to spread their spend across channels to see which one's going to work and kind of expose themselves to all parts of the funnel? Or do you talk with them about being more selective as to which channels and which parts of the funnel to focus on?
Well, it's a little bit of both. We talk about spending across the whole funnel, which is different than spending across all channels. So, right. You know, the funnel's it's different. There's different awareness tactics for each. I'm going to just split it into generation, but you can get more granular than that. But, you know, if you're building awareness, Gen Z is not going to be watching TV, and the boomers aren't going to be engaging with Twitch. So you just kind of have to understand who your target market is, but in a different way than we've understood it before. We've understood it before in terms of contextual targeting, but now you could get much more granular. But to your point, I mean, there is a testing involved in doing this, but generally, brands have to be selective, and they'll have different strategies based on the objectives. If they're building awareness, if they are driving sales, whatever point they are in the sales cycle is going to drive that strategy. But yeah, you have to meet your target where they are based on their habits.
I guess a question for you. Is there some advice that you give brands if they're in startup mode or ones that are a little bit more mature in terms of what they should be focused on, whether it's that awareness interest versus actual closing deals and winning business?
Yeah, so on the more startup side, they don't have a giant budget, and they need to build awareness in their own way. And it's just a matter of concentrating your spend and that strategy and keeping it really tight. So it's not the spray and pray type of thing, but you're really taking what you have. And there is a minimum amount for entry in which it will vary, but you can't just spend $10 and expect to grow. And then on the higher end, the more established brands, some of them need a little bit less awareness. But in general, for all of them, it's going to be a combination, but it will be, heavier, in one area than another, depending on where they are in the life cycle of their brand and where they are, in terms of the funnel hitting their target.
Well, I like that. That's a fantastic answer. Thank you. So I guess with that, Doug, I'll turn to you. Clearly, some of the larger channels are between linear and digital, and there's been some changes of the slopes in terms of the crossovers of spend on digital and spend on linear. Is there a rule or a best practice? Do you have any kind of advice as a spend pattern between those two major channels?
Well, Chris, knowing that this question was coming, I did tons of research. I wrote down 4 pages of notes, and my answer is, it depends.
As a seasoned veteran will do. Yeah.
So I'll try to break this down into something that makes sense, at least to me, probably to no one else. It comes down to target audience, their demographic, older or younger. What are their online behaviors? What are your marketing objectives? Excuse me. Is this a brand awareness play? Is it a DR play? You want to sell some product? Budget is always a factor, of course, that has to be considered. Measurability and attribution. Let's say in the CTV space right now, measurability and attribution are chaotic. So if you're going for a brand play there, good luck. You mentioned it earlier, or Rebecca did, where are we in the product life cycle? Are we launching something new, or is this something that's mature? We've got a lot of data and we can target specifically. Lends itself more to digital. And then finally, what's the competition doing? Take a look at your competitor. Where are they finding success? So, if you're going to back me into a corner, I'll say younger demos, we're spending 60 to 65% of budget on digital and the rest in linear. If they're older, it's more like 50 or 55%. And we're always holding about 10% of the budget, of the total budget, for testing different strategies and different channels. But yeah, I mean, it's a moving target, no doubt about it.
I like that answer, because I think that, yes, of course it depends, and every brand is different and every brand has different, situations and target audience. But generally, I would think that I like what you said in terms of kind of a rule, like if you've got a younger audience and you have something that may be a little bit more startup, leaning more towards the digital universe rather than just linear, and just say that's a base starting point. Because if I'm a brand that's starting up and I say, God, I've got 100K to spend, that's all that I can do. Orient me, please, in terms of where these large buckets of dollars are going to go, and then we can more, finesse and apply granularity to it. But that makes a lot of sense. I appreciate that. So let's say you got a situation like that, Mark. I guess what I would ask you is, what are you hearing from your clients in terms of concerns or results or feedback about where and how to spend? What are some of these common questions that they're asking you?
Yeah, there's the common questions. There's always lots of questions, of course, from clients, just where they're always very involved in where their media dollars are being spent. So just one thing, is the selected media channel, is it the right one? Is it the correct one? Is it going to have the deepest penetration in reaching my target consumer? It depends entirely on several different things. It'll depend on, what is the media consumption of your target consumer? Is it younger? Is it older? If it's older, you're going to probably skew to different media habits than if it's younger. That's just how it's kind of going and how the evolving is. And what are the business KPIs? Are you looking for something like very impactful right away, or like the lifestyle cycle of your brand is going to be a bit of a longer one? That entirely has a massive role to play in how you allocate your media spend. Some clients will come in and be like, I want immediate impact of results. And it doesn't happen like that. It's not like I can go on linear TV and I'm going to see like the next day sales up. We get that question all the time. I've had clients come to me when we started a campaign across several different platforms, being 2 days in, and be like, we haven't seen anything yet. And it's like, okay, it's 2 days. It's like, we gotta, let this go. You see some clients that are not, like that are just like very focused on something like that. And then there's others that understand, they know, hey, this is a life cycle. Like, your campaign, Rome wasn't built in a day, and it does go on. You're just seeing different things, like based on results and, based on questions of media consumption and where your media dollars are going. Is it going to digital? Is it going into linear? Is it going into other verticals? And then, your results accordingly. Are we spending too little there? Are we spending too much there? They're all different questions, all different concerns that will, apply to media consumption and what your demographic is. And, alluded to, your competitors, any seasonality. So lots of different things that we hear in terms of feedback. And, the big question is, okay, like, and it's the golden question, is like, okay, where am I going to get the best ROI on my media dollars? What vertical is it? And, it'll come down to, obviously media consumption, your target consumer, and your KPIs.
I guess a question that I would have is, you talked about older and younger demographics, and Doug said that too. What is that older, younger? So what would you consider to be a younger demographic now? I'm curious.
I would say it would be like, what is it, like the Gen Zs or whatever, even that, like, actually I got this question saying, thinking like digital and social media is like, oh, it's all geared towards younger. And then I was talking to my cousin and her daughter. I was like, oh, okay, so you're on Facebook? And she's like, yeah, Facebook, like, I'm not that old. So like, even like those digital platforms are like kind of saying, like, you think Facebook's younger skewed? No, it's not the younger skewed anymore. So you're kind of seeing, definitely a more propense, consumption on with the younger demographics within that, say, like, 18 to 30 range on, the TikToks of the world, the Snapchats of the world. And then, as we kind of go into it and you see in like an older demographic, which is maybe 35 plus, it will be, index higher with efficiencies on traditional media such as linear TV. Needless to say, with connected TV now becoming such a big part, it's kind of like, in order to reach everyone, you got to be in that space as well. And then it will come down to, okay, younger demographic a little bit more on the digital connected TV, older demographic on linear TV.
Yeah, that makes sense. And I'm curious about how those ages change. I mean, I just turned 86 years old, so I don't know if I'm in the older demographic, or the younger one anymore, right?
That is a well-preserved 86, Chris. Well,
yeah. So Mark, you had mentioned social media, and you had mentioned, of course, Facebook, maybe skewing a little bit older. So Tony, very excited to have you on board. And social plays a huge role in authentically connecting brands to their customers. And at Prestige Social, you guys reach over 25 million people each month. So when it relates to social media, what job do you ask it to do in relationship to the traditional media that Mark, Rebecca, and Doug have talked about?
Yeah, that's a great question. The job of social media is to be more nimble and just faster response time when you're looking at how quickly you can implement a strategy or implement in conjunction with the trends. You're seeing a lot of things on social media that are directly in response to what's hot or what's trending right now. Rebecca had mentioned this funnel, this customer funnel. Social media is kind of the top of the sales funnel for customers, because that's where you're going to go to find your niche market the fastest and introduce them to your culture for free. So you can find those people that are looking directly for what you want without any of the other noise. And the main functions of social media, one, are to find your niche, to nurture them into what you want them to be and what they want you to be. And then lastly, for lead generation, to be able to actually say, okay, this is our product, this is who we're giving it to, this is where we're going to find them, and this is what they're asking us to do. So those are really the best ways to do it. And we can almost create ads and strategies in real time that mirror a lot of the things that are popular now. So trends, where the eyes are going, that are very much in alignment with what is seen as entertainment. So a lot of the ads you're seeing on social media are very much in conjunction with what people see as entertainment, or what you're scrolling through. A lot of the ads are hitting in there, and they're very, very effective because they're not seen as ads. They break down that wall between the consumer and the brand and really build that trust. You're seeing a lot of trust needed, especially in social media with the advent of AI and some of these different things that are popping up. So you're able to get a lot of direct feedback. So comments, likes, shares are allow you to test, go back to the drawing board real quickly and implement something else and do it very much on the fly. And Doug had said in regards to like the media spend, we're seeing between 50 and 60% of the media spend going into these digital ad spends, and it's going to go up more than likely.
That's interesting you mentioned that. I like that distinction, and especially in terms of its job, because that for an ad going on linear, like Mark said, plays out a couple days, a couple weeks. We just kind of have to let it go and adjust. Whereas with social, you can make a change on the fly, and the very next day, you're actually putting together some new ads based on the learning from the day or so ago. I also thought that was interesting in terms of its being able to respond to trends. It's things that are happening quickly, to throw in some clever phrases, because you can now, tomorrow you can talk about, the equinox, right? If you have got any kind of product that, purports to give you any kind of balance, you can say just perfect for the equinox and the balance of nature and the like. So I'm going to stick with you, Tony, if you don't mind. So you said, 50 to 60%, of spend goes towards social media. Social media now is turning into a pretty large universe, right? Or a solar system, whatever cosmology and analogy metaphor you want to use, right?
Black hole.
Black hole, I love it. No, because it's attribution, right? You can see it. But you've got Facebook, you've got Instagram, you've got podcasts, you've got YouTube, you've got TikTok. Already, that's a lot of social channels. I'm probably even missing things like, Rebecca, you had mentioned Twitch. I probably even talked to them all. Are there other social channels or technologies emerging that you think are going to play a major role in media spending in the upcoming year?
Yeah, that's a great question. And Twitch and Kick actually are two that really come to mind. Kick, yeah. So getting deep into the Gen Z, the young kids, because the live streamers.
And I'm sorry, again, I'm 86 years old, so I don't know what Kick is. What is Kick?
So it's just another live streaming app. So pretty much Twitch and Kick are kind of direct competitors, but the live streamers are kind of where you're seeing some of those dollars for ad spend starting to go. McDonald's or Samsung, Pizza Hut, some of these bigger brands are seeing the validity in live streaming, kind of as the new celebrities and the new personal brands that corporate brands are tapping into, because they really hold the attention of that next generation, the Gen Zers and whatever's behind them, the alphas or whatever age is behind them, but because of the authenticity. One thing we're seeing now is authenticity is key. You have to be authentic. You have to be in alignment with what somebody's core values are for them to actually follow you and trust you with their dollars. And that's very, very important nowadays. And there's these streamers. I'm not gonna say their names because I'm sure we don't know who they are, but there's a lot of streamers that are now the celebrities. I was watching a Instagram reel of a live stream of the Grammys, where there was I wasn't watching the Grammys. I was watching 3 levels deep of somebody posting about the Grammys, but they had a live streamer on the Grammys talking to all these world famous singers and songwriters, and they were gravitating toward this live streamer, asking this live streamer about what he's doing and how he's doing it, and just really picking his brain about his brand and how he's growing so fast. And he actually met up with a famous newscaster, and the newscaster was asking this live stream Twitch streamer how to grow on Twitch and how to grow their brand. So you're seeing kind of the shift and the change of the winds from traditional media, and a newscaster asking a video game live streamer how to grow. And it's really crazy, but it's exactly what's happening. And you're seeing that shift is going to go because authenticity is key.
Yeah, I'm curious about that, because beyond, at some point there's a cap of that audience of people who are interested in watching other people play video games, right? That's going to be a universe in and of itself. It could be huge, but there's a cap to it, right? What I'm curious about is if there's other forms of live streaming beyond just watching video games, where, to your point, Tony, there's an authentic person, a personality, someone who's interesting, that is, either, extemporaneously talking about things that they're interested in, or doing something that folks find interesting. I guess the question that I would have then, and pose that to everybody, and Rebecca, since we started with you, we'll pose this to you first. Tony just talked about some of these new talents, where they might be very good at playing video games, but suddenly they're learning how to actually build brand and create awareness, and brands are learning from them how to create better exposure. How does this new generation of talent coming into the workforce view media spending? How do they engage with media? What do you think that they're engaging with that's differently than maybe other generations?
Yeah, I think Tony hit a lot of the high points there with the Twitch, and there's Discord, and there's Kick, and there's all kinds of things. They view it through a digital lens. That's all they've known. They're digital natives. It's always been there for them. They've had an iPad since they were a child. Like that is just the way they view the world. And I'm sorry, there's a storm kicking up here if you can hear that. But it's the same, and it's interesting because I've encountered different clients of different ages and such, and it depends on how old the chief marketing officer is, whether they're 28 or 68, what lens they view it through. So I think it's great with the younger generation, bringing all of this in to marry it to some of the traditional awareness and some of the established digital things. But it could be a little bit of a challenge getting them to see the longer view on terms of brand building, and where some of those awareness plays really are important, because a lot of things that they do in their world is very one-to-one, so one-to-one or one-to-few, where sometimes one-to-many is necessary.
So, Doug, I guess I'll ask you that. As you guys and Apex looks at the landscape of talent, and as you're trying to give some lessons or mentorship of what has worked in the past, I guess I'll ask you: is that what has worked in the past? Is that even applicable now?
Yeah,
What's worked in
sure.
the past, is it?
Yeah, there's guidance that can be pulled out of what you've done historically. I think what Rebecca was just saying about younger audiences, they have all the data suggests that Gen Z and younger have and millennials too, I guess, have a broader definition of TV. And there is a movement from watching video content on a tablet, or more likely a mobile device, to the biggest screen in the house. So back to what I know is TV, regardless of what that source content may be, how that source content gets on that big screen. So I take some comfort in that, because that is behavior we've seen for generations.
Sure.
The deeper engagement happens on the biggest screen in the house, and that is taking place with a cohort that hadn't previously shown that sort of behavior. And I think there's one other thing too, and that's historically what we know as linear TV has had perception, at least, of higher credibility, higher production values. This is professionally produced content, and so brand safety was almost not assured, but easier to come by. And I think that edge that linear has, historically known linear, is eroding in that area, because the production values of what we know as digital content are improving remarkably.
Yeah, they are, and AI is helping with that as well, and that
absolutely
in a really accelerated rate. I guess, Mark, I'm going to go back to you for one more for you, if you don't mind. You had mentioned before about talking to your clients, and they wanted 2 days. Gosh, I'm not getting any sales. It got me thinking, right? So when you're talking with a client, either that's new or trying digital and still wanting to expand on media, what is one big assumption your clients have when you begin the conversation about spending budget? And what is that one assumption block that you have to be aware of, that you have to address up front?
A good question. I'd probably say like, are they getting their return on ad spend? Essentially, like, are we going to get, are my media dollars going to, fund my business and business success? And that kind of comes down to a lot of things on their end, thinking, oh, I want a return on ad spend of 400%. Okay, well, some people daydream on what they think is like a profitable return on ad spend, and others are more realistic. But I think on that is one is like, okay, like they, if their ad spend is going great, and if it is fueling sales, and if it is fueling their business success, they will spend more. So it's in everyone's best interest to, make sure it is successful and get through using the best media verticals and best, media consumption, media planning based on the media consumption. So yeah, that would probably be the biggest one on mine, is just like, am I getting the bang for my buck? Am I, some assume, some are very, can be a very, obviously with media, it's not a guaranteed return like right away. And so, they do get a bit nervous on that. So that is one thing. And like, sometimes that plays down into media investment and them being very, pulling back on media investment, thinking, okay, I'm not getting the return on ad spend that I want. So sometimes it takes a little more to get a little more. So you got to kind of like look at it that kind of way.
No, that makes sense. And I think that there's always a natural anxiety when someone's spending money to make sure that they're getting that return. I guess, Tony, we'll finish up with you with social. Some costs are increasing and targetability is kind of changing slightly. Where do you see the biggest improvements of within social media that you can leverage for your clients in this year, where you can say, gosh, with spend that can change rapidly, I'm seeing, algorithms working this kind of way or another kind of way so that they can best take advantage of social and what it has to offer?
Yeah. So I know we mentioned like AI. There's a lot of AI tools that are being used to not only maximize your ad spend, but maximize the placement, maximize the targeting, maximize everything that you're doing with your niche. We have XR, which is the extended reality, the deep version of reality, which is going to make your media much more integrated and much more kind of hands-on, and kind of really bring that out, especially with like the 5G revolution going on. Everything will be an experience. So we want to make sure we're taking advantage of all these new tools and technologies that we have to make sure we're on the front edge and we're in as many places as possible to make sure that your message is out there and it's authentic and it's clean for those who need to see it.
Oh, I like that. I love that answer, Tony, because AI can kind of help with linear in some ways, probably in terms of placement or targeting, but you would see it be more, I don't know, even much more effective and impactful in social because it can learn so quickly. It can learn responses, it can learn impressions, it can learn click-through rates, it can learn what messages. You can set up a whole variety of different ad sets with a variety of different tests within the ad groups and then learn quickly. And the AI engine can do all that learning very much faster than a human being can. So that's an interesting pairing. I can see where AI can actually make social media even more effective than AI's impact on other channels.
For sure. Yeah,
that's cool.
This is just the beginning of that revolution. Oh, go ahead. Sorry.
No, please, Tony. What were you going to say?
Well, I was just saying, and this is just kind of the beginning of what we're understanding for like the machine learning and some of those kind of top of the cutting edge computing for AI. So, what we're seeing now today is going to be different in 6 months, and that algorithm is going to be different, and how we react to that algorithm is going to be very different as well.
Wow, in just 6 months, I guess we'll have to do another Take 20 to have you back to see what we've learned.
Sounds good.
Right.
All right, so Johnny, this has turned into a Take 30 plus, which is what we thought because we had these fantastic guests. Do we have any questions from the audience?
Hey everyone, we certainly do have some questions. I want to apologize also about the technical snafu, but the good news is I'm back, baby. I'm back.
Right on.
So, let's start off with this question. What's affecting brands' media decisions more? Consumer curiosity and new media choices, or constant development of new ad technology?
I would say from my perspective, it's consumers. Ad technology lags, in my estimation behind any movement in the consumer side. So yeah, that.
I agree. Listening
I
to
do
what the
also.
customers are saying and listening to, again, direct feedback is always going to trump.
Yeah.
All righty, good feedback. Thanks, guys. Appreciate that. YouTube is now the #1 viewed streaming outlet on TV. What effect is this having on the brand's decisions to make social spends? So
What was
like
that? To make social what?
So YouTube is the #1 viewed streaming outlet on TV. What effect is this having on how brands are considering their social spending? So is the YouTube being obviously a social site and a streaming site, right?
Yeah.
Is YouTube's power of influence affecting how brands are considering their social spends?
I
Go ahead, Tony. Go ahead.
No, I mean, we both said yeah, so I think I was all right. Yeah, I think it is, and and it's funny, YouTube TV is a big one. I only watch YouTube TV. After this, I'm literally going to spend the rest of the next 2 weeks watching March Madness all on YouTube TV, and those ads are going to be directly associated with that demographic of what they're looking for. So I think YouTube is a huge. They're definitely on the cutting edge of when it comes to making sure that they're responding to the changes for sure.
Yeah.
Well, what I like about
it is interesting you say that's a great question from the audience, John, because versus linear, for example, linear is very much a network. You have NBC or CBS, and they've got shows, right? You've got March Madness that you can watch on CBS. But YouTube is not only the demonstration of the content, but it is a social channel because you can comment on what you're watching with other people, and that way it's interactive and social. There's never been anything like it, especially as they're adding that to where there's a social component that doesn't exist in linear and can't physically / practically exist on linear. So I think that's going to be interesting, and a new generation of media consumers, or Generation Alpha coming in, they won't know a time without YouTube where you can actually interact and comment and look at stuff and have all these other types of distractions while you're viewing the content. It's pretty exciting.
Yeah, I agree. Thanks, guys. More good feedback, so really appreciate it. Earlier in this conversation, we touched on client impatientness as we tested new options. Do any of you have any tricks or tips on what has worked for you to help ease the client reactions and create a little extra time as you're allowing a test to kind of prove itself out?
I wish. No, this is a question I should be asking. I mean, it is it is managing expectations 101.
Right.
It is a full and transparent communication of the strategy and what the expectations are. Even then, we all know it doesn't shut down that, hey, we've been on,
No.
I just saw my spot, 20 minutes ago and I haven't gotten an ad. Those are in order. I'll put it out to Rebecca and Tony and you too, Chris. I mean, I don't know. I don't have any good tips or tricks other than just, again, say I undersell.
There's that. I agree with you, Doug. And I think along the lines of the transparent communication is over communication, just loading them up, telling them, and also working with them, because that they have questions that come from them, but that they're getting bombarded as well.
Yeah.
So it's just, sometimes I'll work with them and say, what can I do to help you fight the fire on your side? Because usually I'll play into it and say, clearly you understand it. What do you need to communicate effectively internally to keep the wolves away from your door a little bit? And that's worked pretty well, but there's no simple solution to it, but over communication is helpful.
Yeah, I think that's a good point, Rebecca. I mean, you're likely working with either a product manager or maybe a CMO, and that up above they're getting that same kind of pressure. So maybe if there is a trick, it's tailoring that over communication, knowing that it goes up the food chain internally.
For sure.
Great
Question for you
feedback,
guys.
team.
Super fast on that. Are there any resources or PDFs or sources that you can then forward to your client of studies and give them some data? The reason that I ask is that modern postcards in the direct mail, direct marketing space, there's a whole host of studies that indicate the ranges of performance, time lags of performance, various things that we can actually send a client. We say, look, studies indicate USPS has done surveys and blah, blah, blah. So you're just you're okay. You can tell your CEO that you're right in that response rate range that's historical and we want to move it up and blah, blah, blah. Are there things like that and that can help you?
There are, for sure. I mean, I can't think of one single source, but there's definitely things out there. And I will also rely on the media partners, network stations, things like that, to provide case studies or, any kind of data points that we need. But you still are also, you're always up against somebody that's behind the curtain that you don't directly talk to, that heard from somebody else that does this kind of thing. So it's just, you gotta tap dance quite a bit. But you can lean on resources like it, Doug, you probably do that as well. Like you provide some of that stuff.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah, you're right. Case studies. I mean, if you've gotten to the point of execution, there's that, that roadmap has included case studies and, the building of that expectation tree throughout the process. So we do rely on our media partners to give us, some level set expectation as well.
As always, you guys are a wealth of information. Good share. I would go back to Doug's initial answer: under promise, over deliver. That's
right.
Always.
That's the best one.
Well, let's do 2 more questions. In social media, what % of ad spend are you seeing by brand advertisers versus DR advertisers or call to action advertising? So are we seeing a split between like brand and DR guys on the social media side for call to action?
Yeah, and I think I'd mentioned this a little bit. We're seeing about 50 to 60 is kind of what I'm seeing. And again, those numbers are going to differ depending on exactly what the strategy is and what the intent is, how long your campaign's going to run for, things like that. But rule of thumb, I'm seeing about 50 to 60% is where it's pretty standard.
Yeah, I would agree with that.
Cool. Well, let's round it out with this one. This is a fun one. This is kind of like a fun way to close out. Is there a media genre that you do not specialize in that you think brands should include in their marketing mix in 2025? So outside of your scope of specialty, is like, for example, Chris is a specialist when it comes to print. Chris may feel that everybody has to be doing podcasting.
I think that it's a great question. And I would say that, and we just had an episode on Take 20 on podcasting. If you're a niche brand that has a very specific audience and you can find a podcast or a host that aligns with that, if you're, for example, in high endurance athlete group, or if you are a supplement that is for a specific condition, podcasts are a great way to go because the audience is so incredibly specific and loyal. It might not be large, but it's devoted. So I would recommend that if you're that kind of brand.
I vote for podcasting as well.
I was going to say podcast as well.
Yeah.
So I think that podcasts are definitely on the rise. Just like you said, it's a very niche market, but they're very, very loyal, extremely loyal.
I'm going to go a different route, and I'm not saying this just because Chris is on the call. Direct mail. I was on a client call last Friday, and I said, the offer we were talking about, I said, this is direct mail. This works. This works for
Perfect.
direct mail. So
Appreciate that, Doug. And as a note, with direct mail, there's a whole host of automated and traditional direct mail that we can talk about at PDMI East, which is coming up in a couple of weeks in Miami.
right on.
See, Chris, it is Savannah.
A little plug for everyone. I like it. Well, folks, let me just say, phenomenal conversation with Doug, Mark, Tony, Chris, Rebecca today. I hope everyone learned and enjoyed, and everyone learned as much as I did and enjoyed the conversation as much as I did. Before we close out, I'd like to take a moment to invite each and every one of you to join us at the next and upcoming PDMI Take 20 event, hosted Wednesday, April 2nd at 11 a.m. Pacific, 2 p.m. Eastern, where Tom and Chris will be talking about what is happening at PDMI East in Miami. It's coming up. And I also want to remind you that the dates of PDMI East in Miami coming up is April 7th through 9th. It will be hosted at the Eden Rock Hotel. So if you're interested in more Miami sun, mojitos, fantastic Cuban food, mixing and mingling with all your cohorts and friends in the industry, and your toes in the sand, come join us. To join us, all you have to do is get your badge. And to get your badge, just simply go to thepdmi.com. That's thepdmi.com. Purchase your badge. They're $5.95 for non-members, $3.95 for members. And in a couple of days, it will be going up because the online price will be going off, and you'll have to pay an extra $100. So save the money, save the expense, act today. With that said, what a fabulous conversation today. Really enjoyed seeing all of you, or at least hearing you guys talk. Hope you guys enjoyed the conversation as much as we did, and we'll see you next time. Thanks so much.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.
Hi, everybody.